What is up, everybody? It's your girl, Bryn, with crazy hair. She's having a bad hair day. How are we? Welcome back to another episode of the Bad Collection Podcast. Today, today, we are going to be talking about The Walking Dead. I remember when this show started. I was 10, loved it, and I loved it for a very long time. But today, we're going to dive deep into some stuff and things. And a while back, I did some polls on my Instagram. And so I'm mainly going to be talking about those. But to give a little synopsis about what The Walking Dead is, for those who have not seen it, what are you doing? How have you not seen it? Go and watch it. I finally, a couple months ago, just finished, like fully finished watching The Walking Dead. Because after Carl died, it like fell off for me because growing up, like Carl was one of my favorite characters, as he was for many young teens and kids when the show started. And so, like, when his character passed, like, oh, well, even before that, like with Glenn's death, a lot of people were like, I'm done. But Carl's was a huge shock to the Walking Dead universe, for many reasons. I mean, The Walking Dead started off as comics, um, and so they were created, you know, for television. Well, not for television, but okay. Let's take a beat back because obviously Bryn's getting herself confused. Um, so Robert Kirkman and a couple of amazing others made The Walking Dead as comics. Then somebody said, let's make it into a TV show. And then we had The Walking Dead television series. And it is about Rick Grimes and his family at the beginning of the zombie apocalypse. Before the apocalypse begins, he is a cop, and he and his partner, Shane Walsh, are going to catch some criminals. And unfortunately, Rick gets shot and he goes into surgery, he goes into a coma, and he wakes up when the world has ended. And now he is trying to find his wife and son, Lori and Carl. Eventually, he does. And then the story just keeps building and building and building and building from there. And there were 11 seasons worth, and now there are spin offs with Rick and Michonne called The Ones Who Live. I did watch that spinoff, and it was kind of slow for me at first, but I ended up really enjoying it, especially the ending. I just started Dead City with Negan and Maggie. It's pretty good right now. I'm liking it. I have not started Daryl's yet, or Carol's. So I will be getting into those very soon. But for this episode, we are going to focus on the main series, The Walking Dead, because there's also Fear the Walking Dead, and just there's so many different things happening with this series now, and it's really cool to see. I've had the honor to meet a lot of these actors, and they're all wonderful people who kicked butt at portraying their characters on this show. So now that I've given you a little deep dive on certain things with a little bit of confusion, got to get it together up here. Whoopsie. I want to dive into these polls that I posted a couple months ago. And I had people vote on what their thoughts were. So the first poll that I had on my Instagram was, which era was your favorite? So I had Atlanta slash the CDC, which is basically season one. Season two, The Farm. Then we have The Prison and Alexandria. Nobody voted for Alexandria. Nobody liked Alexandria. And I'm sitting here like, once things started moving, it was good. It was good. And especially when we had Negan come in. That first episode of Negan's introduction was insanely good. Um, Now I understand why a lot of people ended up stop watching the show because Glenn died. Like, I get it. Glenn was a very beloved character. Stephen Yeun, an incredible actor, will always be our Glenn. But that was in the comics, babes. So I'm just saying it was gonna happen. We all knew it was gonna happen. What we didn't know was there was gonna be two deaths when that whole thing happened. So not only did we lose Glenn, we lost Abraham. And that was like, yeah. So, I mean, I get it, but also it was expected. I mean, it was in the comics. Come on. Um, so on these polls though, so 20% said that Atlanta and the CDC was their favorite era. And then it was 40-40 for the farm and the prison. Now listen, me personally, I really loved the farm. Um, there was Walking Dead really started at its height once, like between like seasons 2 to 4, and it was amazing. I loved the farm. We got to meet Herschel and his family, so Maggie, Beth, Patricia, Otis, Jimmy, and we got new characters. There was so much drama and so much happening between the characters already as well. Since Rick returned and all the things to his family. Um, so the earlier seasons are always going to be my favorite. There was just something about that time that still sticks with me. Um, and I loved it. The beginning of the prison era was very good as well. Ultimately, I have to go with the farm is my favorite personally. The first season was amazing though too. Again, I can go back and back, back and back, 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 back and forth. I'm gonna stick with the farm though. I just in my soul, okay. And so the next one that I had was favorite villain. Now, I had Shane, because look, love you, John. Love you, Johnny B. Shane ended up being a villain. It's just how it happened. Um, it's just the way it is. Um, then we have the governor, Negan and the Saviors, Alpha and the Whisperers. I want to say this, and this is just my opinion. Maybe a lot of you will agree, maybe a lot of you will disagree. No shade, because I still ended up, once I finally finished watching the whole series, I was like, as a collective, I love this series, will always love this series, have the whole friggin' thing, whole series on DVD. I love it. But Negan and the Saviors plus Alpha and the Whisperers, that those two plot lines, storylines, 100% could have been written 10 times better. There's so many different things that could have come out from both of those arcs, especially Alpha and the Whisperers. Because Alpha and the Whisperers are supposed to be the most hardcore, horrible, grotesque villains of the show. And ultimately, the villain that has stuck out for me out of the entire series is the governor. Um, the acting from everybody, Jeffrey Dean Morgan, Samantha Morton, who played Alpha, Ryan Hurst, who played Beta, John Bernthal, Shane, David Morse, Governor. They all collectively, even though I just sat here and said certain things could have been written better, they all collectively, as the villains of the show, each one of them beautifully portrayed their characters. The acting was stellar from all of them. It's not on the actors in any capacity. I am just ultimately saying I would have loved to have seen more in certain aspects when it pertains to Negan and the Savior's arc and then Alpha and the Whisperer's arc. Um, there's just so many things that could have been different in a lot of ways. Um, again, just my opinion, but overall, hands down, great acting, great storytelling, stellar, stellar when it comes to this show. Ultimately, like I was saying though, the one villain that sticks out to me the most is the governor. Bottom line. Only because there was just something about the way David Morrissey pushed everything in every aspect. Um, dude really went for it, especially, you know, once Woodbury fell and then he found this new group and then he came back, like that just completely like exploded everything. Um, so pertaining to how the poll turned out for this one, nobody voted for Shane. Nobody voted for Alpha and the Whisperers. 80%, 80% said the governor is their favorite villain. And then 20% said Negan and the Saviors. Listen, some of these numbers, when I looked at like the final count, I was like, what? Um, in this sense, I get it. Like I said, I wish there was just more with Negan and the Saviors. I wish there was more with Alpha and the Whispers. And honestly, I would have loved to have seen Shane stick around for longer. Granted, just like how Glenn's death happened in the comics, same thing happened to Shane in the comics, except it was a lot earlier than when it happened in the show. Um, so in this sense, as much as I love Negan and his redemption story has just been so amazing to watch. That's why I'm also really excited about Dead City. Jeffrey Dean Morgan, like, oh, love that man. I get the choice of the governor. I just really do. There was just something different about that whole arc right there with him and Woodbury. So in this sense, as far as best, if I'm gonna be, let's say, best villain for me out of the whole show that like stole the show for me is the governor. My favorite would be Negan. I love Negan. Negan's great. I'm sorry. Everybody can sit here and be like, oh, I hate him. No, no. He's too he's too hard to hate. Best lines ever, ever. Literally. He says the best lines. Like whoever wrote for him, I want to hug them. Like I want to give you a big hug. Wrote the best dialogue for this man ever. So good. So good. I have one in my brain right now, but I'm scared I'm going to missay it. Hold on. Remember about the one? Wait. I'm embarrassing myself at this point. Remember the one about the stupid little prick named Rick who thought he knew shit but didn't know shit? I think I got it right. But seriously, Ricky Dicky do dot A. Okay. You're welcome for all the cringe. It's what I'm here for. Mwah. Um, so yeah, in those certain circumstances, I genuinely can understand why the poll ended up the way it did. I wish Shane was around for longer because I would have loved to have seen how he would have acted with the governor or even Negan. Like I would have loved to have seen Negan and Shane toe to toe. That would have been badass. And you can't change my mind. Like that, you definitely cannot change my mind on. Andrew Lincoln, though, man, like, dude, I love Rick Grimes. I love you. Love you, bro. Um, our next poll was, when did you decide to stop watching the show? I only had three options here, babes. And that was once Glenn passed, once Carl passed, never did. I finished it. So 25% said once Glenn passed. Nobody said anything about Carl's passing, which means either everybody was gone after Glenn or they said, I'm here for the ride. I'm here for the ride. And 75% of people were here for the ride. I came back around for the ride and I should have just finished it, honestly. Way back when, I should have just finished it. I was one of the most loyal people ever, would never miss a Sunday episode. I don't care what else was on television. It was The Walking Dead Sunday. Period. Carl's passing though, man, it just hit me. It really did. I was like, what is going on? What are we doing? Because again, with the comics, when you think about the comics, it's like Carl is gonna be old man Carl, and it ultimately was his story, even though it followed Rick, and the rest of the group. It was ultimately Carl's story by the end of it. And so to see them just take him out, I was like, what are we doing? That was genuinely the worst decision ever made, pertaining to this show. Just my opinion. Just my opinion. But I think that should not have happened. Period. All right. Our next poll is, the acting in this scene is stellar. Finding Sophia, Carl's final moments, Lori's death / Rick finding out, Negan's first appearance. This one was crazy. This poll was crazy. Crazy. Okay. Finding Sophia had nothing. Nothing? Listen, the moment Sis came out of that barn, I was a child. Okay. When that episode aired, I was like 11, 12 years old. The show started when I was 10. By the time season 2 came out, and yada, 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 and that show aired, I was like 11 or 12 years old. Okay. That scene changed the entire trajectory of that show, in a sense of, oh, they literally took a child out. And she's a walker, and her mother sees her, and you have Carl who sees her, who was his friend, who he cared about. Everything about that just changed everything. And then Rick being the one to take her out was like, oh my gosh, that scene will forever be the scene that changed everything for that show. Because that was the beginning. Yeah. Props to Maddie Lintz. Mwah. You killed it, sis. You should have been on the show longer, per the comics. I didn't write, though. If I was in the writing room, a lot of things would have been different, baby. I promise. But unfortunately, that's not how it went. We had 20% that said Carl's final moments. That whole part of it was just sad. It was just sad. Him saying goodbye to everybody, saying goodbye to Judith. Rick Michonne. Um, what still has me bursting into tears every time is the moment he had with Judith, um, before he inevitably passed. Uh, like, oh, come on. I would love to sit down with every person that wrote that episode and try to understand why they made this decision. Because honestly, I stand by taking Carl out of the show was the worst decision to make. And I will always stand by that. So honestly, I don't think if I ever sat down with anybody who wrote that episode, they would be able to like explain it in a way that I would understand, because I would just be like, you just shouldn't have done it. um, that whole part was just heartbreaking. Um, yeah, Lori's death, Rick finding out. So Maggie had to cut open Lori and deliver Judith, and Carl had to, whoops, Carl had to be the one to end it before she turned. Um, right before they came out, um, Carl's face after taking out Lori was just stone cold. And again, it was another little moment like that that was like, wow, this world that they're living in, you really don't have time to be a kid anymore. You have to grow up and you have to make choices that children should not have to make. Um, and Carl felt like he had to do that for his mom. Rick wasn't there. It was just him and Maggie. And Maggie was holding Judith, who was just birthed. Um, just how the scene played out between those three was again so heartbreaking, but it was also just beautiful in its own way. Um, the dynamic that Sarah Wayne Callies and Chandler Riggs had in their mother son moment was so heartbreaking. But she said, in my opinion, exactly what she ultimately needed to say to her son before making the hard decision that she had to make. She had no choice but to say, I have to have a C-section. I had it. But Maggie was like, oh, like, I can't, like, I don't know how to do it. My dad's not here. And it's like, we don't have any other choices. There's a bunch of walkers outside the doors. Like, we don't have a choice here, and it has to happen. So Lori gave up her life for Judith, um, and ultimately told her son, you know, you're going to beat this world, and you're going to grow up and have the best life that you possibly can in this horrible end of the world that we're in now. It was just a moment of like, oh gosh. And even at such a young age, when those episodes were airing, like, it still hit me, and it still hits me to this day when I rewatch it. um that whole episode was, oh, especially when Rick finds out, when Maggie comes out holding Judith and Carl's just nothing, and slowly the tears start flowing, and then the way Rick reacted, I was like, oh my gosh, like, it's just everything about that scene for me was just absolutely stellar, as the poll says. So before I jump down to the percentage of Negan's first appearance, which loved that episode as well, but Lori's death, and then when Rick found out, that is going to be my choice for the acting in this scene as stellar. That episode always has stuck with me and always will stick with me. Great writing in within that episode, and the performances were just gut-wrenchingly beautiful. So I have a lot of appreciation for that episode, as you can tell. So Lori's death and Rick's finding out was at 40%, and then Negan's first appearance was also at 40%. So this whole poll pretty much was at neck and neck and neck. I don't understand why nobody voted on Finding Sophia, because, like I said, that really changed the trajectory of the show itself. That was like the first, oh my gosh, shocking moment that nobody was expecting. But Negan's first appearance, man. Jeffrey Dean Morgan honestly played Negan so beautifully. I could never imagine anybody else playing that role. And when he first appeared and we watched that whole lineup sequence and just even everything leading up to Abraham and Glenn's death and after, it was like, oh my gosh, like he broke Rick, broke him. And that vulnerability that Andrew Lincoln was ultimately able to give to us when Negan like grabs his face and he says like, I own you, you give me everything, like all that. And he's just like nasty crying, snotting, and he's like, yes. It was just like, wow, dude, like insane. There are so many moments of stellar performances for so many of these actors. But these are the ones that all stuck out to me. But Lori's death and Rick finding out will always be my number one. Yeah, amazing, just amazing. How it should have ended. Three options here that I put. I am super surprised that nobody voted for the last one. So, first one, Rick returned, spinoff wouldn't have existed, sorry. So we would have gotten Rick back at the end of this at the end of the show, last episode, Rick would have come back, and then we wouldn't have gotten the Ones Who Live spinoff. Negan and Maggie's would still exist, and Daryl's would still exist because Daryl wouldn't know if Rick came back. Or it would just be Maggie and Negan's existed, and Rick comes back, and it was right before Daryl left, kind of thing. That had 33%. Old man Carl. I will always root for this ending, so let's be very clear. My choice in this is Old Man Carl, and a lot of people agreed at 67%. What I was very shocked by was that no one voted for this last one. This would have been a plot twist that just blew everyone's mind. I know it would have. And that is Rick wakes up from a coma and it was all a dream. You're going to sit here and tell me you would have been like, what? The world didn't end? I'm telling you, that would have blew everyone's mind. I am a writer, just saying. Um but I do ultimately have to agree that it should have ended with Old Man Carl, just like in the comics. Period, point blank. Can't change my mind. Okay? Okay. And our final poll. This one also shocked me. Um, in certain senses. And I'll explain once I go through it all. So, favorite couple or duo: Glenn and Maggie, Rick and Michonne, Beth and Daryl, Lori and Rick. 86% said Glenn and Maggie. Duh. They were the cutest couple ever. Like, let's be so real right now. When those two met in season 2 and then finally, like, had their moment in the pharmacy, we were all like, get it, Glenn. You can't tell me nobody else said that. We were so happy for Glenn. And then Maggie was finally like, I care about you and I love you and I don't need you getting hurt for nobody. And I said, oh, yeah, these two were endgame. And then Negan came along. I understand. I do. I really do. I get it. I get it. I promise I get it. But it was gonna happen whether we liked it or not. It's just what it is. Now, I would have loved to have actually seen Glenn being a father to a teenage Herschel. Uh, I just would have loved to see it. Especially there was a scene, I can't find it to save my life. It was a clip of Maggie and Herschel talking. And Herschel was just like, you have let this man just take advantage of your whole life and he practically controls your brain. And I don't want to live like that. And I was just like, okay, buddy, way to call out your mom. Um, you were in her tummy when your mom had to watch dad die. So sorry, kid. That's just not how this works. Um, so I'm intrigued to see that scene in full. Because I was like, I was just taken aback by the acting from the boy who is playing Herschel, but also then Maggie Lauren Cohan's reaction and just the moment that they were having within that conversation. Again, short little clip. I can't find it for some reason now. It must be in the newer episodes or in the later episodes of season 1, and I just didn't see it yet. So I'm excited to see what happens with Dead City ultimately. Um, at 14%, we have Rick and Michonne. Um, I honestly thought that Rick and Michonne were very good for each other. They both brought out the best in each other. They just had an understanding of each other. I don't know. I just feel like they meshed very well ultimately. Um, Beth and Daryl and Lori and Rick had no votes, zero. Nobody liked them. And I'm sitting here like, Beth and Daryl were a good duo. And when Beth died and seeing that kind of emotion from Daryl broke my heart because we didn't see that a lot. Before that, I'm pretty positive we only really saw that when Merle passed away. Um, and so to see him break down like that was like, whoa. And that whole sequence was just heartbreaking. Like Maggie, like finding out Beth was alive and then to, see her again, but now she's dead. That was another episode that was like, oh my gosh. Um, Lori and Rick, I look, ultimately, the end of the world happened. And Lori thought Rick was dead. And Shane promised to keep them safe and alive. And that's exactly what he did. And during that time, Shane and Lori very clearly developed feelings for each other. And then when Rick shows back up, it's just, Lori's like, okay, well, I'm obviously going back to my husband. And Shane did not like that. Because Shane had fully fallen for Lori. And that's just not how she felt anymore. And she made that very, very clear. Um, Shane wasn't having it. And, that's where, like, just again, when it pertains to season 1 and 2 and just how that whole dynamic broke down and um, everything, it was just like, oh my gosh. And what Sarah Wayne Callies did so beautifully, in my opinion, was you could always visibly see that guilt she carried with her and that she wanted to be better, a better wife, a better mother. And she wanted to survive. Um, her character and just her in general got so much shit. And for what? First of all, and this even goes for, like, when you think about or talk about The Last of Us and the Abby character, the voice actor, or Caitlin Dever, so Laura Bailey, and Caitlin Dever, them, like, voice actor and actress for the video game and then the TV show. The shit that these people get for playing these characters is absolutely asinine to me. It's disgusting. And it is behavior that is not okay. So you can hate a video game character, you can hate a television character all you want. But the moment that you start going after the person that portrayed a fictional character, that's a problem. They are playing a character. They are not that character. And to be disrespectful, to spread hate, to threaten is not okay. Never will be okay. Do not do that, or I'll have a problem with you myself. Okay? Okay. Please understand that difference. And no, no jokes here. Know that difference of a fictional character and an actual human being. Period. That's all I'm going to say about that. Um, to wrap out that part, though, about Rick and Lori, I feel that she visibly showed us as the audience the guilt that she carried with her once Rick came back, as far as her sleeping with his best friend and partner, as well as just a lot of things in general. Their relationship fell apart pretty quickly after Rick found out everything and the farm fell. So right before they found the prison, while they were on the road and trying to find shelter and everything, their relationship got very rocky. And Lori was trying so hard to get through to Rick. And she wanted to be a better wife, to be a better mother, to just prove herself in a way. And that alone is heartbreaking, especially, she's pregnant and they're on the run, and just there again, there is so much that is deeper that a lot of people don't particularly think about. I do because I'm an actor. And I'm just a lot more observant in those senses, and maybe I'm far off. A lot of this is just my opinion um when I discuss these certain things. But again, I feel like she just ultimately wanted to be better, and unfortunately she wasn't able to fully do that. And so, you know Rick finds out she's gone, and he has his downward spiral. But what I also thought was nice was the conversation they had before Lori died, um, where they were able to talk a little bit, but they had a lot more to talk about. But they ultimately still had an understanding then, to an extent, um, for each other and where they were at in their relationship and just in general. And that was another just beautiful, heartbreaking moment between the two. Um, because Rick does love Lori and Lori does love Rick, but there was just so many things that happened and that were happening. Um, and it was just, yeah, heartbreaking. But overall, I highly recommend that you check out this show if you haven't already. If you haven't finished the show, please, 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 as somebody who just recently said, I'm going to finish this show, go and finish it. It is ultimately worth it. And I just want to shout out every crew member, every actor that has ever stepped foot on a Walking Dead set, that has been on our TV screens. Thank you for bringing these characters to life and making just a stellar show that will live on for a very long time. And clearly it still is because of these spin-offs, and there's more talks about more to come. There were photos that are popping up all over the internet saying that Andrew Lincoln has his Rick Grimes haircut back. And I'm excited to see where everything goes for this universe. And if you need another writer or an actor, hi, how are you? I'm here. Thank you. I'm kind of kidding. Anywho, thank you for tuning in for another episode of the Bag Collection Podcast. Our Never Return Indiegogo is now live. It will be going all the way until May, or it is May, I'm sorry, all the way into mid-June. I will be posting some more content very soon. We have 42% of our budget. Our price may be lifted by the time this is posted, but at the moment we are at 2,900. So please consider contributing to bring another indie horror film to life. I mean, it means the world to me, and my cast and crew are just amazing, and I want you guys to be able to see their incredible talent and hard work. And I just appreciate all the love and support for the film, for my work, for the podcast. So again, thank you. If you can contribute to the Never Return Indiegogo, go to indiegogo.com and search Never Return Final. You can put in $1, you can put in $20, you can buy a perk. Share if you cannot. And again, thank you for all the love and support. I hope you enjoyed this episode and more to come very soon. Mwah! Love you.